So, public enemy number one, please turn off all cell phones, pagers, and yes, if babies, replace them as public enemy number one. Please remove babies. So as I said last night to, sorry, I don't know how to turn off my phone. As I said last night, after the first time I read this play, I wanted to produce it in some way. I didn't have any willing victims, so I couldn't do it immediately. But happily I found some. And so you have the performance that we have tonight. I think it's certainly a very humorous and enjoyable production, but there is a great moral in it. There's a great lesson in it, and perhaps if you give me about 2 minutes afterwards, I may say some of the, just point out some of the more striking elements of it. I did say last night that I think any Christian should be able to guess the surprise, and that I was certain that no one would. Not because I don't think you're good Christians, but because in fact the gospel is always something new. And that is the beauty of this story, that it gives us the gospel, something that we should know, and yet there's a certain shock when we find out what we already know. So more than that I can't tell you because it's a surprise, but perhaps later I'll be able to say something. Please enjoy the play.
Heavens be with us! Is this caravan the king's coach, that it should have a sentry outside it? Bless you, my son. Rather unresponsive. Anti-clerical, perhaps? I said bless you. You may say curse you, but at least say something. Dear me, a strong, silent man. It's rather hot here. Would you like some fruit? Really, this seems like taking military modesty too far. Some kind people have just given me a melon and some bread and wine. Would you like some fruit or some bread? He must be deaf. Or some wine? Oh, he must be dead.
Really, Reverend Father, that is rather a fine point. Is he dead? Would it be a proper use of philosophic language to say that he is dead? One school of thinkers will doubtless declare dogmatically that a thing cannot be dead when it has never been alive. Others, of a more mechanistic school, will hold that a thing is alive because it gives the material manifestations of life, as he will do in a minute, when he is wound up. Anyhow, you'll admit he is a model soldier, a quite incorruptible sentinel.
Who is he? Do you know him?
Yes, I knew him before he was made.
Heaven have mercy on us! He's a dummy!
For the present. Until I bring him to life.
Who are you in the name of God? Is this magic?
Have no fear. It is no more magic than the science that Holy Albert studied, or that for which the Pope honored Friar Bacon. It is but a machine, though I swear it walks and talks like a man.
But who are you?
My name matters nothing now. Perhaps it will be known someday. You have the honor, Reverend Sir, to be conversing with the master puppet maker of the world, who's made marionettes to move without wires and speak human speech as melodiously as a musical box. I ought to be at this moment performing before all the crowned heads of Europe, but they have kept me waiting so long that now I keep them waiting a little longer. I am a king myself, and this is my very loyal court. After all, it owes everything to me. What scenery there is, I paint. What plays there are, I write. I make them all, and the story for which they are made. I am like a little god in my own mimic world.
Do not forget the real God, or the real world.
Do not misunderstand me. I am not one of those who lightly sneer at our fathers or the faith. The real world is very grievous, and doubtless it is right that it should worship a grievous God. I only say that for the world that I have made, that though I cannot make it as real, I have at least made it less grievous. Inside that box on wheels, though not outside it, there is a very happy universe. Not cozy, but nobly happy. Indeed, I think the little world is larger than the large one. All my creatures behave with majesty and magnanimity. Heroic virtue always conquers in my stories. And when I come out of my little theater, full of towering generosity and the gestures of giants, into this wicked world, I think the world is both mean as well as wicked, and the truth is smaller than the tale.
Do you know what has made the world mean and wicked?
I only know what has made my own puppets great. So even when they are wicked, they are never mean. Come, you have talked enough of theory. It is time you should see something of them. Two noble and high-born ladies, both of dazzling beauty. One, you will notice, fair and full-blooded, with a frank and rather resolute expression, something of a fighter, perhaps too much of a ruler. The other, you will notice, more subtle in appeal, touched with an elven strangeness. It fretted within with the pale flame of the mystics.
But which is which?
That, Father, you will learn when you have paid for your seat.
Who is this expansive youth in gilded armor?
That, Father, is one of the mightiest heroes, one of the most adventurous kings in history. He conquers half Asia when he is wound up. With the captain of the guard, you have already been in affable conversation. And he has another halberdier to assist him. That is really all.
Who is this scarecrow, all in rags and tatters?
That is a representative author and poet, like myself.
Oh, I see.
Come, the play's very short, and it will be an act of charity. Sit down. Have you ever seen a play?
I've seen a miracle play.
Have you ever seen a miracle?
Yes, I have seen a miracle.
Who are you? By heaven, I know who you are.
You know more than I do.
You are Fra Francesco from Andorra, whom the pilgrims come in crowds to see as they come to the shrine of Compostela. And you worked the miracle.
No man has ever worked a miracle. It is God who works miracles.
But he worked it through you. Ever since you came here, I have known as if the air was changed to a burning transparency, as if paradise were breaking through, as if you could make the trees walk, or the horse of my caravan grow wings, or turn me into one of my own puppets.
It would be a mortal sin to do that, if anyone could do it. Only witches and wicked sorcerers make men captive by their enchantment, imprison them in beasts or birds or turn them into stone statues. God's miracles always free men from captivity and give them back their bodies. However, such portents as you name are sometimes shown in a vision, as a parable or a warning.
Will you hear my confession, even if it is my puppets who confess?
What do you mean?
Will you see my play? It is a part of my confession. Don't you know how it is with our wretched trade? We poets never tell the truth, unless we tell it in fables. I should try to tell the truth, in respect for the sacrament of penance, but I should always be weighted down with the fact of how little I had to tell. But these clockwork dolls will tell you the truth about me. Come, Father, I have a reason, and I really want you to see my play.
What is the name of your play?
It is called The Surprise. But I fear you will not be much surprised at it. Not only is it very short, but very simple. The sort of old-fashioned romantic play we act before rustics at country fairs. Oh, such a very simple complication. How oddly simple those old complications are. Joan is mistaken for Jill, and Jill is disguised as Jack. And they all marry each other by mistake and live happily ever afterward. That is the sort of play it is. And thank God, it is soon over. But yet there's a question to ask, and you could hardly answer without first hearing the tale. It might be possibly put in the form, have I gone mad? Or it might be put in the form, please sir, may I go mad? Will you turn me into a lunatic instead of a stone statue? Father, I speak in riddles until you have seen the play. Will you see my play?
Yes, I will hear your confession.
Sit down on this green bank, and you shall not pay for your seat.
Who goes there?
Go away. Go away at once. I am composing a serenade. I climbed a tree and fell off a high wall into this garden simply because it was the most dreary and desolate spot I could find. A man of any delicacy must find a quiet spot for a serenade. Go away.
We can't have serenades in Her Highness's garden, especially the night before her wedding, can we? I put it to you. The princess is very good-natured.
The what?
You must know this is the castle of Her Highness, the Princess of Garfanana.
Well, I do think it's perfectly intolerable that a man can't get away by himself to compose a serenade without some woman hanging about to hear it. These women, always eavesdropping and poking their noses in where they're not wanted. I do think it's hard if a poor harmless troubadour can't even have his serenade to himself. Send her away. Tell her to go away at once.
You can't expect the princess to go away from her own castle.
When once she fully understands that a distinguished poet and musician requires a little solitude for a few minutes, merely to compose the greatest song in the world, I feel sure that she will have the tact, she will have the taste, she will have the good feeling and savoir-faire to move her castle somewhere else. By the way, who did you say she was?
Her Highness, the Princess of Garfanana.
Stop a moment. Why, that is she whom they call the good princess. Why, she gave food to 10,000 beggars. Nay, wine to no less than 2,000 poets. I apologize. Her castle shall not be removed. Let it remain. To this great pattern of charity, to this patron saint of poets and the poor, To her I will consent to sing the serenade that is the greatest song in the world.
If she has been good to all the poets and musicians, then that is no reason why she should be disturbed the night before her wedding.
If she has been good to all the poets and musicians, it is probably about time she heard a little good music and poetry.
You are joking.
Let me explain. I have reached a crisis. I have reached what we, in a world somewhat different from your own simple round of duties, describe as the creative crisis. It may be described as the crisis at which you want to create something and can't. In most distinguished artists, it lasts for a lifetime. It is then called the artistic temperament. But something tells me that tonight I am very near to turning the corner. There are 4 notes that I can almost hear, but cannot yet name or number, that lift the last line of the song suddenly into heaven. Or at least they will, when I know what they are. Awake, awake, awake.
See, that's what I complain of. We can't have Her Highness awake, awake, awaked at 11 o'clock the night before her wedding.
What is all this noise? Send this ragamuffin away, or clap him in the guard room.
Ingrates, thankless dogs. She has fed and clothed you and maintained you in the arms and authority you abuse. She has set you an example of welcoming poets, even in rags, and you call them ragamuffins. And it is this great protectress, this peerless lady, whom you would cheat and despoil by depriving her of my ode, by leaving her desolate and without the joy and inspiration of my poetry. Thieves that would pilfer from her this treasure, cut purses and pickpockets who
Do you call us thieves, you gallows bird?
I could fight 100 guards. My hand holds 100 swords. Such a woman, such a poem. To it again. I feel the poetry coming. Awake, awake. No, that's not it. Awake. Hi! Stop a minute! I'll kill you in a minute! I've got it! Awake, awake, awake. There you are. Now you've killed me, I suppose, and nobody will remember the notes. Found and lost.
Is he dead?
La 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 la.
That's his blasted song. He's not dead.
That wasn't his song.
I swear those were the notes he sang.
Those were the notes he sang, but he didn't sing them.
What do you mean?
They came from that window up in the castle.
Good heavens. You don't mean that he was serenading.
And I suppose we've killed him.
What is that? Is anyone hurt? I will come down. What is all this? Is this man hurt? What are you all fighting about?
We were afraid he would disturb, Your Highness.
I see. So you started a fight for fear I should be disturbed. He is only stunned. Bring out that bench from under the wall. I have told you again and again not to treat trespassers in this manner.
Shall we take him to the hospital, Your Highness?
Not yet. He is recovering. Bring out some wine.
We are sorry that this should happen so soon before your Highness's bridal day.
Shall I be harder upon the poor because it is my bridal day?
Your Highness has admitted that the man is only stunned.
Yes, the man is stunned, and the music has stopped. A good deal may happen when a man is stunned. He had only just remembered. When he wakes up, he may forget.
If your Highness is interested, I can only hope he will not forget.
Oh, it is no matter. I shall remember.
Let us discuss this question calmly. Am I dead, or am I not dead? It is dark, but that may only mean that I am blind. After all, I was a wandering minstrel, and they blinded me to complete a resemblance which must leap to every intelligent mind. Homer has come among us, they cried in chorus. It is but little that we can do to provide such a visitor with a worthy welcome, or suitable surroundings, cried the simple enthusiasts. But at least we can make him blind. A compliment, but one which I should courteously have waved away. Or perhaps I'm not blind, but blind drunk. Or possibly not dead, but only dead drunk. Anyhow, if I'm not dead in this tomb, I suppose I soon shall be. 10 cities will claim to be the place where I was born, but this will triumphantly establish itself as the place where I died. Perhaps there is already a magnificent marble monument outside, while I'm dead inside. I hope they haven't buried me alive, but this tomb, it's so... You infernal fool! It's so much more likely that it's a jail. It's all coming back, as they say. I had a fight with the princess's guard, and now I'm in jail. Yes, by St. Julian's, here's the bread and water. The great earthenware jug of cold water. When they give you a great hunk of dry bread, then you know you're in prison. Well, bread is better than nothing when you're hungry, and even water may be drunk in extreme and desperate cases of thirst. Saints in heaven! It's wine! Saints and angels! It's good wine! Bread and wine, bread and... cake! It is! It's the old ginger cake with currants that I liked when I was a little boy. But on the other hand, it may be reasonably urged, I'm not a little boy. There is only one possible explanation. The question is settled. I'm dead and gone to heaven. And here is an angel. It must be heaven.
I'm afraid you're mistaken. I am only, shall we say, your hostess.
Forgive me. I have had rather a shock. I thought I was dead. And now I suppose I shall have to accept another shock. I find I am alive.
Do you find that so very shocking?
Well, I find it a little embarrassing. You see, I never was alive before.
I was certainly afraid those guards of mine had really killed you. It would have been, to say the least, an excessive punishment for one playing the guitar, or the fool. I have told them again and again not to interfere with troubadours or fools, so I sent them back to the barracks for a bit, which is letting them off lightly.
I do hope the poor fellows have not gone into any trouble through my fault.
Oh, you needn't worry. I'm not very severe. They will drink water for one night and be back again in the taverns tomorrow for wine.
May I respectfully make a suggestion?
Oh, I am always open to suggestions.
Do not let them find bread and water in the cells and cakes and ale in the taverns. Lock all the doors, keep them in jail, and then put wine in their water pots.
What do you mean?
It is because I have just drunk wine that was like nectar, because I thought it was going to be water.
You are an odd person. But there may be something in what you say.
Lady, you are the sunlight of your people. Sunlight and starlight as you watch them night and day. They must be as happy as the day is long and dance from dawn to dusk. They must fight for a glimpse of your face and sing of you in every street and thank God when they think of you.
I do my best. I think I do some good. Nearly all people round here own their own land, and those who cannot have good regular wages. Every man is secure of finding a pig in the pig trough. Every man has ale in the ale cask. You seem happy. There are a few complaints. As for dancing, well, perhaps they are not a dancing sort. Perhaps they are not a singing sort. As for thanking God in the street, no, I will not say they are not a thanking sort. They are, well, they are contented. I am content.
You seem a little sad. People generally are when they say they are content.
Oh, no, no.
Good lady, what am I? Mud out of the highway soiling your carpets. A rag blown over the wall. But will you not let me speak one moment for all the ragged people on the road? The truth that your officers do not tell you? What I know out of the very mouths of the poor of God?
What in the world do they want?
They want surprise! They do not merely want security, they want surprise! They do not merely want regular wages, they want irregular wealth! You say they can always find a pig in the pig trough and ale in the ale cask. But if ever one fine morning they should find a pig in the ale cask and could drink wine out of the pig trough, they would think they were in a fairy tale.
Is that why you wanted them to find wine in the prisons?
It is because I have just drunk such wine as was never drunk since the feast of Cana, the wine of surprise. Only God could work such a miracle. I never drank that at any banquet or in any tavern, for there I was expecting wine. I never drank it till this night, when I was stunned, blinded, in the black darkness, desperate, believing myself buried alive. But thou hast kept the good wine until now.
Was not that the miracle of the wedding feast?
Yes, I am told that you are near your own.
The wedding, I fear, is not always a surprise.
It would be better if it were, I fancy. I have often wondered whether the wedding could be as sudden as the wooing.
You think there should be two miracles of Cana? That it should apply to the wedding as well as the wine? It is strange that you should say that just now.
Your Highness thinks it strange?
Because of something that has been in my thoughts for some time.
I trust I said nothing unfitting.
No, very fitting. It was strange because it fitted so well into what I had been thinking.
I do not presume to inquire into your Highness's affairs.
I suppose you know what everybody knows. Phoebus, king of Fontarabia, was once an outlaw knight fleeing from the wrath of his overlord, and he came and hid in this castle, which was a more famous and powerful castle in my father's day. My father protected him and gave him horse and money for escape, and the whole world knows the rest. The wild boy who hid with us became the first soldier of fortune of the age, defeated his overlord, conquered 4 or 5 kingdoms till his glory shone from Baghdad to Biscay. All that remains to be said is this. Before he left us long ago, he had proposed for my hand and promised to come back and claim it. He is coming back today.
He seems a very unique and eccentric sort of hero. He has actually gained his glory and not lost his honor.
Oh, I never had any doubt about his being faithful to his honor.
To his honor.
Why am I telling you all this?
Great lady, great angel, saint! I do not have the wildest notion why you do not throw me out of the front door.
Because I am not a stupid woman, and I can see that you are a clever man. I do not know much about poetry, but I know about men. I do not know whether you're a poet, but I know that you're a diplomatist.
One frequently in danger of being thrown out the front door does perhaps become a diplomatist.
I do not mean that. I mean that you can persuade. You persuaded me with your very surprising theory of surprises. What would look more like lunacy to many people than all your talk about the pig in the ale cask? And yet it was true. I know it, and I shall remember it. It fits into my plan, and for that plan, I want the help of your diplomacy and persuasion. For that plan, it is necessary, I am bold enough to say so, that the King of Fontarabia should keep his pledge and the nuptials be celebrated here.
You mean his marriage with your highness? Well, there can be no man alive who needs to be persuaded to that.
I am not so sure, but I want you to make it sure. Come, I appoint you my ambassador.
It would be as great an honor and a little more in character if you appointed me scarecrow in your kitchen garden.
You may scare the crows, but not the eagle. Phoebus of Fontarabia, at least, will not mock my ambassador's poverty, or mine.
It would be easier to be your scarecrow.
As if I did not know that you are a man who could trust his own wits everywhere.
Until about an hour ago, I did trust my own wits everywhere. Unfortunately, about an hour ago, I lost my wits.
What do you mean?
What I mean is something so mad and monstrous that we should have to think seriously of throwing me out the front door after all. It is better to say simply that it is my privilege and duty as a diplomatist to complete the negotiations for this royal marriage. It should be happy. It should even be easy for everyone else. It is only difficult for the diplomatist.
I do want to make people happy. I have always tried to make them happy. And if I did not always succeed, you have shown me the reason why. There is really no happiness without surprise.
Trumpets!
Princess, it is the king, and he has sounded the 7 trumpets that he never sounded but once before the emperor. But of course, you know the story.
I'm afraid, my dear, that you know more stories than I do.
But everyone knows how the emperor brought up 7 great cannons to destroy his little company, and Fontarabia only answered him scornfully with the noise of 7 bugles, and then charged and cut them to pieces with the cold steel. But I must go and see that the household is ready for his train.
Now, I was telling you that I like making people happy. But you were wrong when you called me a saint. Now, she is a saint, and yet, in a strange way, I find it difficult to make her happy.
Perhaps that is because she is happy.
She seems only to be happy when she is making herself unhappy. You know, the sort of person who chooses goat because she prefers venison. It generally ends with my forcibly giving her venison, even if she prefers goat, and serve her right for being a saint.
Yes, I know the type. If you want to give her anything she really wants herself, you will have to bind her hand and foot and thrust it down her throat by violence.
You are an amazing man. Do you mean you have guessed anything of my plan?
I am a diplomatist, madam, and know nothing beyond my instructions.
I have been to the chapel. The priest is ready.
And this gentleman will inquire whether the bridegroom is ready.
It seems rather a hurried wedding, but there is nothing to do but put on the wedding dress and veil. Did you expect a great crowd of wedding guests? Surely you remember the old custom of the castle, that the priest is alone with the bride and the bridegroom, and the bride does not lift her veil until after the thing is done? I think that is the happiest way of being married. I should like to be married that way.
Oh, you should like to be married that way. Well, you could have been married hundreds of times, and any way you liked. I often wanted you to, but seemed to be quite happy without it.
Who would not be happy in a house where such things happen? Who would not be happy in a world where such things happen? It is like having Charlemagne in the house. I always say his victories have been more wonderful than Charlemagne's. Roland would not have died in the deserted rear guard if he had served Fontarabia. First faint sound of the horn, he would have wheeled his whole force and surprised and routed the enemy by the very suddenness of his return, as he did at the gap at Alcalar.
You puzzle me very much, my dear, sometimes. I always thought you were sort of a nun, and yet you talk like a musketeer.
After all, my fathers fought behind your fathers in 100 feudal wars, and were always faithful. But you had better try on your dress and veil before you actually go to the chapel.
Seems all right. But this veil is very long and heavy. I suppose it's part of that notion of nobody knowing anybody till it's all over that you're so fond of. All the same, I still do not understand your oddly assorted enthusiasms. What is the common idea that makes you like nuns and like soldiers?
Obedience. The most thrilling word in the world. A very thunderclap of a word. Why do all these fools fancy that the soul is only free when it disagrees with a common command? Even the mobs who rise to burn and destroy owe all their grandeur, terror, and a sort of authority, not to their anger, but to their agreement. Why should mere disagreement make us feel free? I know you are fond of dancing. Do you want to dance to a different tune from your partners? You are a fine horsewoman. Do you want to think of walking northward all by yourself when you and your horse are traveling southward together? You have called me a nun. I am not a nun. I'm not good enough to be a nun. I have not said. But do you suppose that nuns are unhappy? I never see them pass, silent and hooded through their quiet cloisters. But I have a vision, a vast vision of Amazons, wilder than any heathen valkyrs, riders rushing into battle, a charge of chivalry going all one way, and every rider is free as Joan of Arc, galloping to God. That is the real vision of obedience.
I don't believe this veil hangs quite right. I wish you'd put it on for a minute and let me see. I am interested to know. You really believe in obedience? Even all that funny old feudal obedience? You are always such a dreadful reactionary. Just turn round this way a minute and let me see. The train. Yes, the train will have to do, I think.
If it is all right, you had really better put it back on. It is hardly a public occasion, but you never know if there will be silly gossip about any delay.
Don't take it off just yet. So you really do believe that, on the whole, obedience has done more good than harm, in spite of wars and terrible vows, and you would observe it yourself?
Yes. But do get these things on. King may be waiting there already.
Maria Margarita, I charge you on your allegiance not to lift that veil or drop that robe, but to walk as you are into the chapel and stand before the priest. As your father carried the shield before my father in 20 battles, I command you to go before me. You may yet behold a vision, and it will be the vision of obedience.
Sir, I mean no discourtesy, but this haste is dreadful. I had hoped to see Her Highness the Princess and explain. well, anything that might need to be explained.
As we are dealing with your majesty, I doubt whether there is anything to be explained, much less anything to be explained away. You have only shown that loyalty and love of honor that shines upon your whole career in coming here, to this defenseless castle, to show that your word is greater than the world. Of course, it is an entirely defenseless castle. Her Highness the Princess is rich in nothing but the love of all who have known her. She has but a few guards and the sword of the poor Belgian who is almost a beggar. You are a captain of great armies, and to come and go as you choose. It is for you to choose.
Who the devil are you? You say that you are a ballad but by thunder, you know how to speak to a gentleman.
I have only stated the obvious fact of the position.
Yes. Curse your cunning. You know that the only way to bind a gentleman is to tell him he is free.
Most respectfully, I repeat that I stated facts. You could claim great alliances. The daughter of the Emperor or anyone else you choose. The political power of this family is less than it was.
And now you are slandering me. I don't care what 1,000 idiots may think. But I can see you are a man with brains. And I will not have a man with brains who slanders me. Enough of this talk about being a king or knowing an emperor. I am a courseman and a common soldier. I have won most of my battles by understanding coursemen and common soldiers. But you will never understand them. In 1,000 years, if you suppose that coarse and common men know nothing except coarseness and commonness, all other men, I suppose, we love our opposites, especially women. But we are quite sincere. I do love beauty and purity, and a noble heart in a woman.
Then indeed the friends of the Princess of Carpignan have nothing to fear.
Oh, wretched me. Not duty, but love called me here again. Not a princess, but a woman called me from the wastes and the wars. And when I passed, I heard her where she walked under the willows. And the wind in her swinging robes, they swing when she throws back her head. I felt her in the very sun, and the wind upon the mountains. She fans the wind, she shines upon the sun. A woman in a castle, which is the casket and the jewel, the only jewel in the world, the only woman in the world. But not your princess.
Sire, you honor me in a way that no man could forget. Tell me so frankly of your feelings. But am I to understand that those feelings have nothing to do with your Holiness words and my princess?
You are to understand that I shall love Maria Margarita till I die. There it stands. And watch what 100 other kings or 1,000 other soldiers have said. They would have said that I could marry the princess and love Maria, and be happy with both in a way that is common enough. Yet, I have never thought of it.
I trust because you could not utter such an insult to the Princess of Garfiana.
No, because I could not think of such an insult to Maria Margarita. She is different from all other women. She loves my honor.
Then go and deserve her love. If she believes you will keep your word, do not break her by breaking your word. And never mind about what they call happiness. Women as high as that are above happiness. Do not treat her as some vulgar thing and give her a lover. Leave her the man she loves.
I know what you mean. And no, it is too late. It is she. I could have won if she were not here. Don't I know that black dress with drops of blood? My blood. Shall a man turn back when it is his own burning soul that is standing behind him?
How many more poor devils are rotting in ditches and ramparts because you told them it is dishonor to turn back?
Break your guitar, Master Ballinger, for you have learned to blow the bugle and sound the charge.
I am assured that your majesty is passing to your happy and most noble wedding feast, on which we all invoke so many blessings and joys.
I shall go whistling, comrade, for I have often faced death before.
Well, that's over. Every dog has his day. I am a stray dog that has had a most amazing day. So now let's go out again into the night. But before I go, Donna Maria, I have had a fancy to make a confession. And I think somehow I can make it to you.
I was a dog and I had my day. But for all that, I was a dog in a manger. Never in 1,000 years would I have ever asked for what I wanted for myself. But I was most terribly annoyed at having to help another man to get it. Several times I nearly went mad and bit him. Yes, you are silent. And I don't wonder. I came here crawling out of the gutters and I fell in love with the princess of the Darby Mountain at first sight. A joke, isn't it? A joke no living creature shall ever have the chance to laugh. Except you. And you do not laugh. What a consolation in a world weary of laughter are you people who do not laugh. What wells in the desert? I do not know whether she would laugh. I rather fancy she would not even care. If I were standing beside the princess, as I am standing beside you, I doubt whether my words would reach her. It would be like going up into the garden and shouting at the stars. Never in the eons needed to reach such stars shall I ever say to the woman I love you. I say it to you, for you are merciful. And I sometimes think, perhaps you also can stand alone. You are still silent. You are not horrified, for if you were, you would go away. Come, Donna Maria, I have thrown off the mask. Can you not throw off the veil and let me see one good woman? And perhaps hear one good word before I return to the taverns of thieves? I cannot see your face, but somehow I cannot imagine it as cruel. I have certainly learned a little trick of surprise. Well, am I to be hanged on a garden tree, or will you want to pardon me because it is your wedding day?
I have you to thank it is my wedding day. But indeed, in truth, it is Donna Maria's wedding day.
What do you mean?
I sent her in my place. They have always loved each other, and I told you that I like making people happy.
You did this? And then, can you be surprised that men love you?
Oh, it fits in well enough with my plans. The king will protect my house and my people when he is married to my friend as much as if he were married to me. And Maria will do what I should want done for the poor, including the poets. Perhaps I may even be allowed to advise her a little. I shall be a good confidant, an excellent lady in waiting. And that is all I really cared about, the city and state of Godriana.
Maria? What is that?
That is the cry that has not been heard on earth since it was heard in Eden. It is the cry of surprise. For once in all our fallen and mazy wanderings, a man has seen his most secret daydream come true. Many a man has been lucky in marrying the woman he loves, but he is luckier in loving the woman he marries.
But could you not?
No, I could not. If I had gone to Maria and offered to give place to her, she would have been burnt at the stake before she accepted the sacrifice. She would never have allowed me to sacrifice anything. To the last, by every sort of stubborn dodging and mulish silence, she would have refused to sacrifice anything for me. And even if I had gone to the king to do him justice and offered to release him from his word, he might have refused to be released. There was nothing for it but the trick of the great surprise. The trick which you taught me, as you have taught me so many things.
There is something I should never dare to teach you.
My friend, you will have many others to teach. Listen to me for a moment. You have honored me, speaking of an enthusiasm, a flame, or what you will, of which I should remain proud. But the flame is from you and not from me. You may dare hope to be some sort of inspiration, but the poet was for the poem and not for the muse. In the long I do not even know your name.
My name is Oliver Olivares.
My name is Christina. Goodbye, Oliver.
Goodbye, Christine.
So we go back to the old road. How familiar all the muddy paths look, and how strange the castle, as if I had never been inside it. Was it a dream? And is it indeed fading?
La 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 la. I have waited long for my serenade. You're surprised, I hope.
Get rid of the light. There it is, as you see, such as it is. As you see, a very simple play. If you ask me, a rather dull play. But you have no idea how much it excites the rustic audiences who like to see drawn swords and crowned kings and princesses living happily ever afterward. Anyhow, as you see, a common romantic melodrama. One of 100, you may say. Quite conventional. Did you notice anything peculiar about that play?
I rather think I did. But I would like to hear your own explanation of it. For, as St. Thomas says, authority is in the author, and, though he was a Dominican, he was often right.
I wrote this play for a bet. I won the bet. I did not incidentally win the money, because, to tell the truth, I made the bet with an itinerant artist like myself. He was a showman with a very popular and successful set of puppets, and his plays were infested with villains. They depended entirely on villains. Whenever the heroine is doubtful about the hero, up jumped the most valuable villain with a tactful taste for poison or a diplomatic dagger. And then the heroine knew the hero was a hero. It seemed as if all virtue is really produced by villains. Well, he betted me I could not write a play without a villain. That was easy. Let me make up the conditions, and the most virtuous person may act or appear like a villain. But I swore I would do something more than that. I swore I would make a whole play, not only of good actions, but of good people. In that play, not is there not only a single villain, there's not a single deed of villainy.
Yes, I noticed that.
I do not mean that you are bound to approve of the prudence of everything that is done. The princess is not above sort of a practical joke, so long as it's really practical. Donna Maria puts obedience before sacrifice, and sacrifice before sanity. The king shrank from his duty, but he never doubted it. Anyhow, as I say, a simple plot, a simple solution. You may even say simple ideals. And then...
Were you going to say simple characters?
Ah, that is the burning light. That is the light in which things turn transparent. Now I know I was right when I said you could read the heart.
I know what you desire. I do not call it very blamable, though some may call it blasphemy. Whether it were possible is another thing.
If you know my secret, then you will know why it was that I asked you for a miracle.
Because the people in your play are not truly simple people.
You see, I knew them. I knew them very well. I have met that troubadour in 20 taverns or tramping 20 roads. I was with the army at Alcala and saw the victories of Fontarabia. Do you know what I mean? Believe me, they are not all simple characters, although they appear for a moment in a very simple story. They are very passionate, very complicated, very real people, capable of 1,000 other things than the things they have to do on this stage. Only it all moves swiftly and smoothly and is soon over because they do right. When a clock is right, you do not bother about the clockwork. You merely look at the face and hands. While a servant is a good servant, you hardly notice you have a servant. So these very real people flash past you in a few movements, and they seem unreal because they do right.
Do you want them to do wrong?
No. They could do right. They would do right. They have it in them to do exactly what they do in the play. These people I know so well. They have it in them. And yet they have nothing in them.
You are not content when they do right, and you do not want them to do wrong. What do you want them to do?
I want them to be and not to do. I want them to exist.
You were saying you knew them intimately.
I know them down to their vitals, and they do not exist. I know them better than my father and mother, but where are they? Not in their own bodies. Their bodies are only clocks that I myself fool with clockwork. Not as my friend, the fashionable puppet maker, would say, in the mind of the public. Heavens no. His public, my public, any public, only sees a king behaving in a kingly way, in a poet, in a poetical way. And then it is all over because they do right. You will say they exist in my mind. Ah, you have come in at last upon the tragedy of the author.
Of the human author, perhaps.
Father, where are these people? I know them better than my father and mother, but where are they? Why, they only exist because I wanted to get them out of my mind. I wanted them separated from me in my life, in living lives quite different and entirely their own. And so, after all, they are. Have I got a great hog and armor of a princess and of a soldier in my mind? A considerable burden that would be. Am I a princess? Can you look at me as man to man and say I'm a delicate and sensitive lady in waiting with a turn for religion? My whole purpose in creating these personalities was to put them away from me, to put them a long way off where I could look at them from outside. But where have I put them? They exist. They have minds of their own. Why have they not got wills of their own?
Ah, you want them to have wills of their own.
Remember, Father, that I began by asking if you could work a miracle.
And I began by telling you that no man can work a miracle. But to some there has been granted a sign.
Father, these people deserve to be alive. They are everything else except alive. They are intelligent, complex, combative, brilliant, bursting with life, and yet they are not alive. You do not answer. Perhaps there is no answer. But indeed, and most truly, there is a very interesting question. I see these people from within as many-sided, full of possibilities, capable of figuring in 100 different plots and plays. I am familiar with the secrets of each. Do you know that the young critics of the conventions of the stage are often quite conventional critics? For instance, all your critics who speak about real life will say that my romantic ending is quite unreal. They will say that the poet and the princess, or the soldier and the saint, would hardly last out the honeymoon. They are wrong, and I know these people much better than they do. The princess, though she has her faults, more faults than they know or can guess from the play, really does care about justice and the right ruling of things for the poor. And she is the first princess who ever had a poor man for a prime minister. To the king, war really is poetical, a thing of pageants and cavalcades, like great tapestries or frescoes. The princess does want to rule the whole world. The king, who could conquer the whole world, does not want to rule it in the least. He wants to win battles with a romantic risk. In fact, he has the same romantic view of them as Donna Maria. And as neither of them will ever doubt the duties of a lady and gentleman, they will pass their lives quite happily. In a dream. I have told you all this, Father. I'm not quite sure that you have heard me, merely to show that I do see rather deeper into my own. Father, the puppets are moving, and I never wound it up.
Glad I brought this bottle along with me. I always need a swig to get through the night watch.
People used to say these waxworks and dolls were ghastly and blood-curdling because they were only puppets. But they are ghastly. It's true, they are ghastly.
Because they are not puppets.
They are coming!
Yes, you have seen your wish come true. You have put them outside yourself. They have wills of their own. They are living lives of their own.
I only wanted my play.
What is their play now? Do you remember telling me I might call it a hippogriff or some monster from the land of miracles? The most monstrous of all monsters are marching across your stage, shaking the earth like dragons or chimeras. The most towering, most terrible creatures that life ever let loose upon chaos. Stand back. Stand out of their way. They are living men.
Halt! Who goes there? Who goes there?
Ah, who goes where? That is the immediate and practical problem. Where do you think you are going, for example?
What are you doing here?
Being barged into by a man in a crooked hat to whom I have never been introduced. Permit me, however, to arrange your hat and your sentence in a more logical form. If you mean, what do I intend or purpose to do here? I beg to inform you that I intend to sing the greatest song in the world. But I cannot get the last 4 notes.
Who are you going to serenade?
I am not one of those incompetent troubadours that need a lady to hang about and listen. I never need a lady accompanist to my serenades.
Oh, no, you mustn't do it here. Why, the princess won't like it. Tomorrow's her wedding day.
What princess?
The princess of Garnafa. The princess of Garfa.
By a scholarly process of transliteration, I infer that you were trying to say Garfanana.
Garfa.
If it is indeed the princess of that state, I am both honored and gratified to find myself in Her Highness's dominions. In fact, there is something that I should very much like to say to her. In any case, the reputation of that noble lady is surely in itself a rebuke to your somewhat inhospitable attitude. Are you not aware that your mistress is famous throughout the world for her acts of charity, even to vagabonds, and especially to poets? I assure you the poets are well aware of it. There was a story that on one occasion she gave wine to no less than 2,000 poets.
Wine. She's a good sort, the princess. She doesn't object to wine.
Nor I infer do you.
No, my boy, no. Here, have some.
Thank you. You are a generous fellow, but I think not. To be frank, I have already had some. In the nearest tavern with some of the last of my remaining coin, I reached the perfect stage which is never recovered. The drunkard deserves his fate. He is not content with being drunk. He is always trying to be drunker. A deplorable case of the sin of discontent. Also, remember this. It is a maxim for all poets. A man should keep sober enough to praise wine. Now, you are not sober enough to praise wine. Will you now produce on the spot a golden ode to Dionysus? You will not. But I, Mark, you have a yet more solemn office to perform. It is my plain and obvious duty here and now to sing the greatest song in the world. But I cannot get the last 4 notes. It begins something like this. Man is the lord of the fruit he got. This won't do. I can't sing. Throat too dry or something. Man is a... Well, it's against my strict rule, but I think I must have some of that. I say it really is a jolly good song, but I cannot get the last 4 notes. Man is a... Can't get the first notes now. It was a mistake to drink that stuff, but now I've done it. I suppose it's a hair of the dog. Cure the old with the new.
Here, what wine are you drinking?
Oh. What is all this noise? Guard!
What is happening? I will come down.
Stand up. Stand up. The princess is coming. Your Highness, I am sorry to say that the guard appears to be drunk.
Oh well. Take him back to the barracks for a bit and put his head under the pump if you like. But don't be too hard on him. Isn't there another over?
Yes, the other appears to have hit his head a little in falling. But he's all right. He was certainly drunk, too.
Put that pavilion over him to keep the rain off. And leave him plenty of water for when he wakes up.
Your Highness is always very merciful to these vagabonds.
Shall I be less merciful to a vagabond who is drunk because he has had nothing to eat than I am to my own servants who have good food and shelter?
Your Highness' rebuke is just.
When this man recovers, let me know before he goes.
No. Definitely no. It seems clear that I am not being examined by the Inquisition after all. I thought they put a sort of band around my head. In fact, there still seems to be a sort of band around my head. But it's getting looser, and the Inquisitors have politely withdrawn. They seem to have been a nightmare. But I'm still in the dark, and I'm feeling bloody thirsty. Well, I'm in luck after all, for there seems to be a great pitcher full of water. Just what I wanted. That does one good. That does one a lot of good. It's a good drink as water. But come, this will never do. a problem of the most profound kind presents itself to the mind of the philosopher. Who am I? What can be the matter with me? I had hitherto supposed that I was Olivares the troubadour, pride of the banquets of the bards, star of symposia, prop of many inns and not a few pothouses, round whose ambrosial boughs the vine is wreathed with the laurel. And what am I doing? Drinking water. Nay, enjoying water. The scientific intellect bends itself in vain to explore the mystery. Surely I can't have become an infidel Turk in my sleep. Yet here I am, lying on the floor like a slave of Mohammed and lapping up water. Is thy servant a dog that he should do this thing? Well, I suppose the princess could be a witch and turn me into a dog, but she could not turn me into a Mohammedan. That would be heresy, and it would be my obvious duty to send for the inquisitors after all. No, I am afraid the scientific intellect arrives painfully at another conclusion. It seems clear to my slowly awakening consciousness that I must have been very drunk last night. I'm sober now, I suppose, but I still feel a little queer. Well, it is just like my luck.
What do you mean?
I mean that I am in heaven, and I have a slight headache.
Still, I fear I do not understand.
Your Highness, I was drunk in a ditch, deserved to be left in the ditch. And it is with all that mire upon me that I must stand in the presence that I honor most, that I fear most, that shames me like an army of angels.
But you have only just seen me this moment.
Yes, just at this moment. That is what is blackest and bitterest. This moment. Lady, you will hardly believe me now, but I have had happier and more honorable moments in which I could have somehow stood up before you and, however humbly, given my testimony.
Your testimony?
Oh, we always give our testimony, even if it is discredited by the witness.
And who are we?
We are the miserable race of poets, of writers, of men who think they have something to say. Oh, they always say it. Never mind about my writings or sayings, but think of all the great singers and sayers who have sustained and refreshed the world. Think of all the great songs and epics you have known, and the men who wrote them. And think how few of them, how very few, were ever worthy of what they sang or said. Far away upon the terraces of antiquity, the voice of our father Ovid cries aloud for all poets, his children. Video meliora proboque, deteriora sequor. The better things I see, and I approve them, but it is the baser that I follow. The sin I would not, that I do. And through the ages there have been prophets prophesying and poets testifying to eternal truths, but never a man behind them. Never a sane, strong, balanced, complete man to follow them. The poets sit in the throne of Dante. Whatsoever they command you to do, that do, but do not after their works. For they say and do not.
I think I know what you mean. And yet perhaps you are a little too sweeping. You know, I still have a sort of fancy you might do something someday, if you did not say so much.
Yes, Your Highness, you are right. And yet, that is the devil of it all. You see, there is always something we have to say.
I'm sure there will always be something else you have to say.
Oh, I know I can talk the hind leg off a donkey. A very useless thing to do to a very useful thing like a donkey. But if you had tried as often as I have to talk the head off a human donkey, then...
Am I the human donkey? No. I will have pity on your face of horror. What is it that you have to say?
And now, after all, I cannot say it.
That would certainly be very extraordinary.
If I say it, you will think I am mad. Well, you can always say I am drunk. Have you ever heard that a drunken man sees double? Oddly enough, I am seeing double now. All this scene between us is doubled somewhere. Oh, I risk a joke. There are two of you and two of me, or we are shadows of ourselves that stand somewhere in the light. This has happened before. You know the feeling. Or it will happen, or is happening now, or happening better. Somewhere you and I are talking, and I am not so much ashamed, nor you so rightly scornful. Perhaps it was my dream, but I felt it again with that draught of water and that flood of light as you entered the room. And it seemed to me that somewhere, or at some other time, I had come to you like an ambassador, a tribune of the people, speaking for all the poor of your dominions, and telling you the truth that could not be known from lawyers and public officers. That what men want is not food, but feasts, not security, but surprises. And now I have lost my right to tell it, and I tell it still.
You say that what men need is surprise.
Yes. If you raise your servants' wages, do not tell them so. Throw people money through the windows as you pass, or drop things down the chimney like Santa Claus. Or put wine in the water pots, like a greater than Santa Claus when he gave the great surprise. I have said that before.
If you say it again, as I'm sure you will, people might begin to understand. You really mean that we could increase the good we do to others by always adding some element of surprise.
There are some people who would hardly accept any direct happiness unless you sprang it on them as a surprise.
Yes, you are right there. My friend Maria Margarita is like that. And it is strange that you should speak of it just now, for I have had something of the sort in my own mind before. I suppose you know the circumstances of my betrothal and marriage. They are all over the countryside, and a troubadour must have heard them. Phoebus, king of Fontarabia, arrives today to redeem the promise he made when he hid in my father's castle as a hunted man. Since then, as all the world knows, the hunted man has become a hero and a conqueror, and it is now he who can extend to us in this impoverished state his alliance and protection. You probably know that these alliances, even when they are alliances by marriage, are not sentimental. If it were a sentimental matter, I suppose I might hesitate to tell you that I want this alliance secured, and I want your help.
Your Highness, do you not realize that I am not only a common drunk, but what my cheery companions would call a shabby tramp?
I realize that you are an uncommon and rather clever man, and I am not quite a fool myself. Do you think I am such a fool as not to know that clever men can sometimes get drunk? Believe me, I know something of the poor you talk about, and I am not squeamish. Now, there is no one else around this castle for miles who could possibly help me where brains are wanted. I want you to be my family diplomatist to the king when he arrives, and make sure that this wedding contract goes through.
You want me to see that your wedding contract goes through?
Yes. What is there odd about that?
Nothing odd. Oh, not odd. Simply impossible. Simply starkly impossible.
Nonsense. I know it is just the sort of thing you could handle in a tactful sort of way if you like.
If I like. If I like. Oh, if I'm doing what I like, I shall like it, shan't I? I shall wallow in it. It will be perfectly delicious to be diplomatist and get your Highness married to this imperial gentleman who arrives with so much pomp and triumph.
What on earth are you talking about?
As I have had the honor to explain to your Highness, I happen to have gone mad. Quite sober now, only mad. But not so mad as the king of Fontarabia if he can't find his own way to his own wedding under these particular circumstances. I beg your pardon. Of course, I am entirely at your Highness's command. I will do my best. I have noticed that people often do their best when there is nothing else to be done. I may as well take to diplomacy as take to drink. Drink has not served me well in this affair. It has spoiled the best scene of my life.
Do you not realize that I'm giving you a chance to redeem yourself and more? I know it is just the sort of thing you could do. I know you have a head on your shoulders.
Yes, I have a head. I also have a headache. But your Highness can trust me entirely. Only...
Well, what is it now?
Oh, I wish we were in that world that never was. in that story that never was told, where I did not have a headache, but only a heartache.
I don't know what you mean, but I should like my ambassador to look a little more cheerful. Come, you must never be cast down. Perhaps all of us shall end with a great surprise.
Princess, it is the king, and he has sounded the 7 trumpets that he only sounds before the emperor. Since that day when they brought up 7 cannon...
Oh, you know so many of those stories, my dear. I know it is the king, of course. I have asked this gentleman to receive him. I'm sorry if I was impatient, Maria, but it has often puzzled me that you are so enthusiastic about soldiers and soldiering when you live a life like a nun. Soldiers and nuns seem to make a curious combination.
At least they can both combine. I think that is what I like about them. Nobody seems to understand that people can be free to combine, and not only free to resist and rebel and live for themselves. At least they both believe in obedience.
And you believe in obedience?
Yes, I do. My fathers obeyed your fathers, and I will obey you in everything. But the most obedient servant has the advantage of being allowed to make suggestions, and I really think that you had better try on your dress and veil before you actually go to the chapel. The priest is there already.
The bridegroom is not there yet. He is talking to a friend of mine. This veil is very long and heavy. I suppose it's all part of the idea of not being seen till after the ceremony. Or perhaps I've got it on crooked. I wish you'd put it on for a minute and let me see. Well, my dear, you have certainly obeyed me this far, but I was wondering.
Wondering?
Would you obey me in serious things, if I were really serious?
I should obey you in all things. It is for you to judge if they are serious, but I do think you should put your veil back on again. It seems to me to hang all right.
Maria Margarita, I charge you on your allegiance not to remove it, but to walk as you are into the chapel and stand before the priest.
I fear, sir, that we are traveling over the same ground again. I came here, well, to be quite frank, I came here because I was afraid to come here. I think I may fairly say that I am not often afraid, but I can say, what is better, that when I am afraid to do a thing, I do it.
Sire, it is your glory and all your history. I cannot doubt that this same great sense of honor will carry your majesty through all your problems to the fulfillment of all your promises.
I have laid my cards on the table. Unfortunately, the cards a man holds and hopes in are not always court cards.
Nevertheless, your great honor has brought you to the castle of the Queen of Hearts.
I have told you who is the queen of my heart.
Your majesty will forgive me if I say what can never be said of you. It is not such players at the great game as you who would win even a Queen of Hearts by cheating at cards.
When a man says a thing like that, there are only two things to do: to kill him or to thank him.
I thank you.
What can I say in thanks except that you were born to be a king? For I may take it that your pledge stands firm.
There has never been any question about any pledge of mine. And even here, oh dear heaven, it is she. I could have won if she were not here. Don't I know that black dress with drops of blood, my heart's blood? Shall a man not turn back when it is his own burning soul that is standing behind him?
A plague upon your burning soul. Let it burn alive as mine is burning.
What did you say?
I said nothing, Your Majesty. My lips were locked in an impenetrable diplomatic silence.
Really, to look at your face, I could believe that you had never said a word. But somebody certainly said something.
I trust you do not suggest it was the lady.
No, by heaven! But I should like the lady to say something.
The lady I represent has already said something, and I must insist that her word comes first in this house.
You take a high tone, sir, but I have to consider...
Your Majesty has the choice. For Her Highness's sake, for all our sakes, choose and be done with it.
Then by the crown of Charlemagne, I will choose, and you shall be the witness of my choice. Since you are so much concerned about it, I have sought an opportunity to explain, and you have practically refused it. Very well. You see, my love, that fate is by all the gods. I was going to say that fate is against me, and behold, fate is for me. Fate is for us both, and my own will goes with it like the wind. When will and fate is one, then only is man a god, and this is my hour of godhood. Must I walk the world in flames and agony like a martyr or a heretic, and never look to the heaven for which I suffer? You know me. All I have to give, and all I have to lose. My heart, my hand, my sword, my crown. I offer everything to you.
Sire, it is my privilege to accept.
What the devil?
What is this jugglery?
I think it was you who juggled. Sir, you are witness to these events and to this final declaration. His Majesty, King of Fontarabia, has repeated in your presence the offer for the alliance of our houses. There was never any doubt about the pledge His Majesty had placed in our keeping long before. But I am glad that my ambassador should receive the notification in regular form.
Your Majesty, but this is madness!
That is not quite regular form.
My lady, I am past all such forms. I must speak or see you ruined. You do not even love this man.
If I did not love him before, when he was a noble knight, on whose word I rested as on the foundations of this castle, how much more do you think I love him now, when his spurs are broken off and his sword broken across his head?
Then where is everything to end? You will be utterly unhappy.
Can I be more unhappy than I am, when he has laid in ruins all my plans for the happiness of others?
Then why
should he be happy? Why should he enjoy infamously and insolently as a foe what I was going to give him as a friend? Why should this dog snatch out of my hand the bone I had myself saved for him, and then be rewarded for doing it? He was to have all that was mine to grant or withhold by right, not because I was generous, but because he was base. Oh, I am to stand aside and watch a beautiful idol of beatitude. I wanted these people to be happy, in peace, in honor. All my plans respected that in him that he insults.
Yes! You care for your plan. If you really cared for your friends, you would let them be happy now. But it is always your plans!
Both His Highness and Your Majesty continue to talk about your plans. I seem to be the only one that is thinking about your happiness.
Or about your own.
Are you indeed the eye of God? Or are we all transparent in this light from hell?
There is no happiness now for any of us. There is only justice.
Or only vengeance?
Yes, if you will, only vengeance. Is it my fault that you have left nothing alive but indignation? Maria could sacrifice herself for love. What is it to you if I could sacrifice myself for hate?
It is everything to me, at any rate. Is this man worth hating so much? Is any man worth hating so much? Oh, I know my style of argument may not be fit for a palace, but your argument is fit for a madhouse. You treat His Majesty like a criminal who deserves nothing but vengeance. And then because he is a criminal, he must be your husband. He is mean and false, and therefore worthy to be your husband. He has betrayed you and made everybody miserable. And these are your reasons for choosing him as a husband.
At least I had good reasons for choosing you as a diplomatist. I'm glad to note that you have a clear mind and a logical method of persuasion. Like a good many other men with clear minds, you do not understand women.
By Hecate! But I think I understand one woman. All you care for is power. You are the real autocrat. I rule kingdoms and lead big armies into battles. And in armies, men must do as they are told, or they all die together. But I am not such a despot as you are. In your heart and soul, you are more bully when you feed one beggar than I am when I am driven to lay waste an entire province. You want to win the battle. I only want the battle to be won. We who live in camps have at least good fellowship and can be glad when a comrade covers himself with glory. I have known men who were great enough to be glad when a comrade had redeemed their blunder. But you will not let us redeem your blunder. You care for nothing but your plan.
Who has thought for anybody else in all this business but I? I have thought for everybody else, and now all my thoughts are to go for nothing.
I should like you to think for yourself.
As His Majesty condescends to say, I had a plan. As a mother has a plan for babes unborn, as a creator has a plan for worlds uncreated. For all you knew of that, you might as well have been uncreated or unborn. Yes, in that sense, I look to the triumph of my plan. You at least know I never meant to bring you to all this misery. You obeyed me, but you know I did not only want your obedience. I did love you. We have always loved each other. You do know that, do you not?
Donna Maria, this is too distressing a business for you to be involved in it any longer. Permit me to summon your attendants and escort you to your apartments.
Maria, you will hear my voice at least when I say, I love you. Maria, you cannot be struck deaf and dumb. It is I, and I have lost all and chosen you. And you say nothing. Say at least that you can hear me speak. My God, you have sent her mad between you. She has lost her reason.
We, Your Majesty. Did we break tryst at the altar where she was waiting as a bride? Did we dally with another on the way?
You witch! You queen of devils! It was you!
Choke with your lies, you mud-mouthed liar! Do you think I care that you were a king, now that you were less than a man? Do you think I will tolerate such snarling at the princess without so much as sticking a skewer through a rat? Defend yourself.
A fight?
Yes, Your Majesty, a fight. Without cannons or cavalry, or convenient hills from which to survey the campaign, or hosts of innocent men to perish between you and the enemy. Fight in the devil's name if you will. I fight in my lady's.
In the devil's name then, on that at least, I can prove you are the liar!
And in the devil's name, what do you think you are doing with my play? Stop! Drop it! I'm coming down!
in appreciation for all the work that Father has done in putting up with all of us and helping us get through this play, which I hope that all of you have enjoyed, I would like to present him on behalf of the cast with a bottle of port that we managed to hide from the guard. Thank you, Father.
After the last showing last night, just a few maybe questions on the play, and I thought perhaps I could just answer that in advance. The world is very grievous, and it's right that it should worship a grievous God. Why has God made such a world? This play, I think, answers that very well. God, in fact, had the perfect ideal. Like the puppet master, the creation that he makes is perfect. The mechanism is perfect. There is no flaw in what he makes. And yet he chooses to double the stakes, and he gives to that perfect mechanism, that perfect computer, a will of its own. And it's through that free will that all other evils, that all evil enters into creation. It is none of God's doing, it is all of ours. So a friend said, well, I always wish that it would just end after the first act. But in fact, in which act is there more virtue? In the second. As little as there is more virtue in the second act than in the first. There is no virtue in the first act for the same reason that there is no vice in the first act, because they are puppets and they follow the script of the play. And virtue and love of God is only possible with free will. And yet we see how quickly things descend into the mire. And there is only really one possible solution, and that is for the author of that creation, for the Creator to intervene from the heavens, from above, and say, I am coming down. And so, by a certain symbolism, the author then shows to us the incarnation, that this violence and this tragedy of a perfect creation can only be stopped by the intervention of God in his creation. And we cannot expect that. And so it is this continual surprise with every, for example, sacrifice of the Mass. God intervenes again in his creation as he comes down upon the altar in perhaps a memorable way. If you can always answer that question very easily for your children of why there is evil in this world, and the only thing that we can hope for is that in the midst of our temptations and our sins, God once again intervenes. Thank you. I hope you enjoyed the play.